Hey mate, how you doing?
It's just you and me.
Start.
Yeah. Just the two of us.
How's the day been?
Yeah, good. Yeah. Very good.
All the cleaning then.
What's that?
All the cleaning then.
Yeah, totally. What about yourself?
That's been good.
Yeah.
Good morning so far.
Where are you? Gold Coast or Brisbane?
Goldie. So the office on Goldie today. So, yeah. Is there anything specific you want to get out of today?
I don't know, just maybe follow on from these interview questions.
Mm-hmm.
Interesting experience.
Yeah. Why is that?
I don't know. I think I just probably assumed that it would be easy for the other people, but it wasn't.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it was like, oh. But it was also really good. Like, it's obviously good constructively, but also good for. I see a pattern.
Mm-hmm.
Which I think is good because it kind of tells me that whether I'm at work, at home, or out of work, I'm kind of the same. So, so that's a good thing.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was it's good.
What was the common pattern?
Don't be Superman. That was a bit of a pattern, and I was like, yeah, totally get that. People really struggle with what can you never count on me for, though.
Yeah.
Because on the count on me, because I think when you say, can you count on me, they're like, oh, everything, right? And I'm like, well, what's everything? They're like, well, I don't know, you should just be there for everything. And I'm like, okay. So I think one person might have, only one person answered that out of 4.
Yeah. So you want to that's the question that everyone always resists. So you're just consistently pushing for it, just even more.
I pushed it for like 5 minutes for everyone. I was like, I'll just wait. I don't know.
Yeah.
But I said this in the first one. I said, well, I'm not asking you that now. I'm asking you the opposite. They were feeling uncomfortable, and I was like, I'm okay. Look, I could sit here till 5 o'clock. I don't care. but they were kind of like, I can depend on you for everything. I'm like, yeah, but there must be something that, I have flaws. There must be something that, yeah. So, because I rang Brooke this morning and I asked him if you asked the questions, and he's the only one that could answer it. But even he took probably 10 minutes.
Yeah.
So, I think even the people closest to you struggle as well. I don't know, and I'm sure the other way around. If Brooke or someone asked me, I'd probably think I'd smash it, but I probably was like, oh shit, you'd have that kind of like put on the spot. So yeah. But it was cool. I mean, I do send out a few things, like I said this morning, and get regular feedback. But it was definitely more cool just picking the phone up, and I did a couple face to face too. So it was it was kind of fun. I quite enjoyed it. And I guess it proved to myself how far I've come in the past couple of years. I think because I was just open for anything. I was like, well, I don't care what comes at me. Just if they call me a fuckwit, who cares? Like that's their perception, and I can choose to take that or not, depending on.
Oh,
you interrupted your meeting.
Sorry.
Yeah, so one of the things with it is you just start to get that different level of feedback, and then it becomes addictive as well.
Yeah, like I just wanted to keep ringing people because I was like, oh, okay, I'm going to just go someone that's worked with me for a while, someone who's new with me, and it was good. It was all kind of not the same, but it was just yeah. And the thing is, I didn't really, as much as you asked the question, what's my strengths? Just I was like, okay, I just wanted to get through that one. I was like, okay, let's just get to the other stuff because I was like, well, you're probably telling me stuff I kind of probably know, or just I want substance. Yeah.
What was that, Brooke? You're on mute.
Oh, come on! You were loving it when I was giving you your strengths, mate. You were like, "Yeah, keep going."
Yeah, what did I say? I said strengths as in plural, so give me more than one. And then weaknesses, I'm like, just a weakness, no plural. No, it was really good. Are you eating your lunch? Yeah, paper bags.
Scoffing it down.
Get in there.
How are you, Laura? That good.
Just chilling.
So, Brooke, you ready to share what you get out of doing the experience before you fill your mouth up again?
Yeah. No, it was good. It was very good. Obviously, the one we did last week was very nice. And it's helped. The one I did this morning with Sarah was really good. Really good. She jumped all in, which I was really impressed about. She came out and just said things like there was like the little things that came up at the start, like time, like can never rely on you for being on time. And I sort of just stayed in silence, and then it was quite good because then she sort of became more out with like what some of the things is for her. It was like doesn't always feel like she can talk to me about things that are on her mind because she knows that everything that I'm doing is from the right intention, but like she knows that I can potentially be a bit stressed about a few things, and sort of her concerns. She doesn't want to put her concerns on me in those times, and then sometimes when she does talk about it, the conversations don't go too well because of the energy that sort of brings to it. So that was quite good. Weaknesses, inconsistencies, which I thought was quite funny because that's what I brought up with Reese today, and then I was bugging Sarah and she told me the same thing. I was like, oh shit, we must be brothers.
Okay, thanks, Mum and Dad. Cheers.
Yeah. So overall, the experience was really good doing Sarah because I did her when I did it 3 or 4 months ago, and I was hoping to do Will today as well, but he said he's going to give me a call at 3 o'clock, so I'll still do them because I wanted to try and do the ones that I did a few months ago just to compare them. So it was good. Yep.
What about you, Kirsten? What did you take out of the experience?
Actually, it was really good. I combined them all today. How many did I actually? I had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Actually, I did more than 4, but I combined them all.
And what did you
wrote them. Hey?
What did you learn from the experience?
No, actually, it was good. There was, No. What I thought people had come up with, but it's funny. Mum and Dad had sort of a slightly different approach to what everyone else had done. So I kind of got a little bit of a different perspective from them. No, but it was really good. It was good. And one of my friends in particular, well, it's a workmate / friend, but it actually made her really uncomfortable to do it. It was hard for her to do for me. But yeah, no, it was good. Hey?
Oh,
actually, yeah, she did say that. She did say that, but she goes, it was so hard for her to do. And so, yeah, some of the things she said, yeah. No, it was good though.
So what do we all learn from the process?
Well, it's how we show up in the world to others.
What else?
Feedback is good for growth.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And
probably how open we are. I think I was just saying to you before they got on the call, I just felt more like I wanted feedback. It was like,
yeah, I was excited to do it.
Just give me whatever you got. I'm just open to whatever. If you want to, as bad as or good it might be, like just, and then and I just wanted to keep doing more.
So what was the common theme that we noticed from the other people that were asking?
Uncomfortable.
Yep.
Especially face to face.
Yeah.
Why is it uncomfortable?
Well, I guess they don't want to see that they kind of come across bad. No matter how much you set it up and say, this is open forum, just whatever, they just, people don't want to say the truth all the time, I guess. Force are scared to, say the wrong thing, or they're not doing anyone a favour, really. Them or us.
So what we want to think about is every single person has the intention, especially the people that you care about and care about you, they have the intention of what's best for you. So they often soften things down. They don't want to talk about question 4. They don't want to give you that feedback because they think that it's best for you just to be like, oh no, you're okay.
Yeah.
You're amazing.
Yeah. When the reality is that's the most powerful question. Because they think that it's being mean by answering that question. Their thought process is instantly one of going to, oh no, you're okay. You're perfect the way that you are. What we're trying to do is we're trying to determine what is the picture and the story that they're writing about us. So the way that we start to think about that is we go, every single person is basically just a data projector. So thinking about a data projector, what we do is we project out our view of the universe. Those are our thoughts. We have this representation, this inner monologue, this inner dialogue, whatever you want to call it, this internal view of the world, which just projects out everywhere else, because what's going on internally for us becomes a representation externally. So what we're doing in this instance is we're allowing to see other people's projections. We're allowing to see what the story that they're writing about us is. We're creating the depth of communication with these people so we can actually alter how we turn up. Because phase 1 is getting the data. Phase 2 is allowing them to see us to show up differently. Because they don't have the distinction of collapsing identity with behavior. Because if they're like, oh, you know what, you're always late, Brooke. Well, they collapse that behavior with who you are.
Yeah.
Then you only ever show up like that. Now, if you go through a process and go, I'm committed to showing up on time and I want you to call me out on it if I don't, well, then they actually start listening based on your possibility rather than based on your past, because they're filtering through, we know the distinction of, we filter through everything through memories, through meaning, and through comparison. They do that too. So what we begin to do is we get to them without them even realizing it, to start to filter it, not through memories anymore. We allow them to start to filter how they see us based on our future, based on our possibility, based on the potential in the future. This is how we begin to impact our environment around us. Our environment is just the relationships that we have with people in our lives. We become the source of that then. We become the creator of that, rather than being at the effect of it. Best example is, all right, you're the 5 people you hang around the most. Who's heard that before? You become the wealth of that. You become all of those people, right?
Yeah.
You want to know why that's bullshit?
It's totally bullshit.
The reason why it's bullshit is because it's like, all right, you want to be a millionaire? Hang around 5 millionaires. All right, cool. Do you know 5 millionaires?
No.
Yep. So I work in the bank.
Yep. The whole point is it's a broken mechanism. It makes sense in theory, not in practice. You see, what happens is when we are the one who begins to imprint our environment, then our entire environment creates this circle of allowing every single person to actually step up, rather than actually being nice to those people and trying to be surface because we don't want to hurt their feelings. That's why people don't answer question 4. Because the unspoken agreement is, I won't call you on your bullshit, then you won't call me on my bullshit.
Yeah.
That's the unspoken agreement by every single person. What we start to do with all of these things is we're breaking all of these unspoken agreements that you live your entire life by, which are creating worlds of limitation for you. And very few people are going to take a stand for you to have those uncomfortable conversations, to be able to go through that process, to be able to then step up. Eventually it gets to the point where you're the one who actually creates your entire environment. You're the one who raises that level of consciousness, and then everyone else starts to raise with you at the same time. Then you become the person who that actually starts to create your entire environment rather than being at the effect of it. Make sense?
Yeah.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
How'd you go with the interview, Stacey?
Good. It's all been very informative.
Mm-hmm.
Lots of crossovers.
Yeah.
Yeah. I got my 5 done, which is good. And I'm still waiting on a couple of answers which weren't thought of on the spot.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Cool. All right. So what I'm going to get you to do, Stacey, is to do one more on this call.
Okay.
So you're going to do me. Because as part of this, every single person has to have it done on them and done to them.
Okay.
So everyone else has been through that process already. So what are my greatest strengths?
What are your greatest strengths? I think your greatest strengths are that when you speak about what you're passionate about, it shows.
Mm-hmm. Thank you for sharing. Is there anything else?
And that you're open to hearing us out, non-judgmentally.
Mm-hmm. Thank you for sharing. Is there anything else?
All for the moment.
Thank you. What are my greatest weaknesses?
You're still on the chocolate.
block a day, isn't it?
Is there anything else?
Greatest weakness. Uh, I'm trying to think on it.
Mhm.
On the level that we know each other here.
Mhm.
And I can't pick anything from what I've seen.
And if you had to give one thing, what would that one thing be? So what we're starting to do is you're starting to condition people to come up with the answer, and we start to open the loop for them.
Mm.
So if someone doesn't come up with an answer, then you say, I want you to say it out. Your greatest weakness is, because then your brain instantly activates your reticular activating system to start looking for that answer. Because what we're doing is we're reaching into your unconscious to be able to find what the answer is. We're not actually going into your conscious. If we sent the questions out, it would be a conscious process.
Yeah.
They would think about it. They give surface level answers. We're doing it without any warning so that people go into their unconscious and see what comes up, because then that's the honest feedback that we want. So just go through the process of saying, your greatest weakness is.
Your greatest weakness is your headphones that you wear. They're distracting to me.
Thank you for sharing. Is there anything else?
That's all I got.
That's all you got? Awesome. What can you always count on me for?
I can always count on you. Follow us up for our homework.
Mm-hmm.
And to be open to going on tangents, if that's where the conversation goes.
Cool. Thank you for sharing. Is there anything else?
All I can think on.
Cool.
Yeah.
What can you never count on me for?
I can never count on you for. No. And if I had to choose something, I'm going into that second phase. I'm trying.
So just everyone else that's like listening here, what we're looking at is when you're doing this as well, you're actually judging whether they're actually looking for it. So as her eyes start looking up, she's actually going into memories and looking at creating that, which is part of it.
If I had to answer, I can never count on you for asking about how my business is running right now. Coming from business coaching.
Mm-hmm. Thank you for sharing. Is there anything else?
That's what I got.
Cool. Is there anything that you've always wanted to say to me, but I've never let you? Or something that you've always wanted to say?
The puns are funny. There should be more of them.
You hear that, guys?
I appreciate the puns.
Thank you for sharing. Thank you for sharing. Is there anything else?
That's it.
Awesome. So now we've all, thank you. Now we've all experienced both sides of it and the discomfort of those last two questions, right? So I made sure that all of you have been through the experience at least once of being on both sides of it, so you actually understand the process. So then you can actually begin and go, all right, well, I know that this is how uncomfortable it's going to be for that person when I'm asking these questions, and how important it is to be able to give that little push. Now, step one is just getting the data. So what we do is we start to use that information. You see, what happens in life is people show up in a specific way. people show up based on their memories of us. We show up based on their memories. So every single person come in contact with Brooke, it's like, all right, well, every other time that I've caught up with Brooke, this is how it's gone. We've both been conditioned to turn up a specific way based on our memory and our interactions in the past, which means that we turn up from memory. That means that we turn up with the coach. You could be a coach. You can be working with a coach. You can be working with me, with your mom, with your dad, with your partner, with people that you work with your clients. You turn up to them and they turn up to you based on memories, which means we've written an entire story of how they normally turn up, which means we collapse their behavior with their identity without even knowing it. Because that's just the way that Kirsten is. That's just the way that Brooke is. That's just the way that Stacey is. We turn up in their life in a specific way based on how we've done that in the past. Now, we can begin to make that switch so we actually turn up based on the future rather than the past. What we do is we, number one, go through the process of actually creating that concept of getting that feedback and then actually using that so that we can actually turn up in different ways. So what we then do is we actually start to communicate with people, because communication creates completion of things. So what happens is if someone gives you feedback and there's an open loop there, well, we can actually complete that. And then we start to show up differently for that person because we start to show up based on our possibility, not based on memory. Then what happens is instead of us actually turning up in a triangle consistently or in someone else's triangle, this is the thing. We can be the problem to someone else. Because if they're writing a story about us, often we're the problem, right? They're the victim. That's automatically how it goes. We show up based on being in a triangle. What we start to do is we start to impact the environment around us. We start to impact the relationships around us by allowing ourselves to actually turn up based on the circle of possibilities rather than how we turn up in the past, rather than all the memories of us. Because if they don't have the distinction of collapsing a person is not their behavior, well, then they just do that automatically. So when we start to talk about, all right, this is what I did in the past, this is what I'm committed to in the future, well, then that just creates a deeper level of conversation. And you also create this environment of people who then take a stand for you to step up into that. You've enrolled this person in you actually being the person you actually want to be. So you've got a circle that then is raising you up consistently. Because they're listening to you from your commitments rather than the memory. Make sense? Do you want to see how that works?
Yep.
So this is what I've been doing, is not asking Stacey about her business on these calls. And the impact of that is she doesn't feel heard in terms of that instance. And we don't necessarily talk about that. And that creates a disempowering cycle for her in terms of her thought processes. So what I'm committed to doing now is asking her about that so that she can have completion of that, so that she can have a conversation around that, so I can work through that with her. And the impact is she feels heard. She then does that. And then she then keeps me to account for that, right? That's put an end to that memory and created a possibility over here that she's going to hold me to now. Now, I've got someone holding me to account. I've enrolled her in me stepping up in my life. Because what this does is it allows us to actually create a transformation in our life because we're the first person to quit on ourselves. It's like, oh yeah, I'm gonna go to the gym every single day, but we don't enroll anyone and then we don't go. What happens? I'll just do it Monday. You enroll someone in that. You say, all right, let's get a coach. I'm going to get a coach to be an extra level of accountability. I'm going to enroll my mum in this extra level of accountability. Boom, boom, boom. Every single person we enroll in something, we create an extra level of accountability. We're more likely to stick to something. Does that make sense? So what we're doing is we're creating this feedback loop between the people in our lives, which allow us to actually turn up how we want to turn up, because they don't say things like, oh no, you're okay, you're perfect the way that you are. They say, hey, I thought you said you made an agreement on that. I thought you said you're going to commit to doing this. They take a stand for you to step up. Then they start to step up as well. Every single person creates deeper levels of conversation with the other person, which means that they then up their game as well. And they start to see you based on your commitments. So the example with Brooke is, oh, I'm committed to turning up on time. Well, then every time, if he says that, he creates that commitment, he turns up late, I'm going to be like, Brooke, you just broke your integrity. Are you going to clean that up right now? And he can clean that up right then. And then he can reset that commitment. What we're doing is we're creating a feedback loop of our integrity. Because we break our integrity all day, every day to ourselves. So, integrity check. How many people watch The Matrix?
Nope.
And saying, I didn't watch The Matrix is completion of that. Because previously, it was just an open loop. Now, whether you do it or not doesn't matter. The whole point is actually the completion of it. Because it's a broken agreement, and it becomes complete when you take responsibility for that. When you say, I didn't do that, that completes it. When you justify for any reason, that's blame, that's fault. You can just say, no, I didn't do it. I'm not here to hear your reasons. The whole point is you go to morally making that wrong. You can choose anything that you want to choose. The whole point is when you take responsibility for it, you gain power in that. Not me. Laura didn't watch The Matrix either.
Fuck The Matrix malarkey.
Mr. Anderson.
So, when we think about that, that means you're in one of two camps. You're taking a stand for other people, or you're trying to look good for other people and not take a stand because you want them to feel good about themselves. You don't want to hassle them. Now, there's an element of that. We're not going out there to go and make every single person wrong for anything they do or don't do. The whole point is we can allow ourselves to take a stand for them to be able to step up based on where they're at. So that means that if you're on this call, well, then you can take a stand for every single person on this call because you have the same distinctions. That means you can enroll each other in your transformation. That means you can use your current circle of influence to actually be one of the feedback loops for you. That's not to say that they're going to do the same thing. They can do that. It's not about them, though. It's about you. Then what happens is we start to go through the process instead of having others show up for you based on their memories. They show up in a specific way. They start to actually show up differently as well for you. And you start to show up differently for them. And when we go back to that concept of the projection, what we think about is every single person is writing a script for every single person. So imagine this. Imagine I go to a movie theater and there's one person watching. I walk in, I sit behind this person, and then I'm like, holy shit, that's me. And then all of these people in my life are there. They're all playing all of these parts. And I'm writing all of those parts, right? I'm directing that movie. I'm the one who's creating that virtual reality of the world. I'm writing that. And then I notice, oh, that's actually me in front of me as well. I'm watching that. I'm the one who's actually watching that. I'm projecting that. I'm writing all of those parts for every single other person. So naturally, I'm like, oh, yeah, that's cool. It's just normal. I'm like, oh, I'm just going to go see what else is on. I've already seen this before. That's my life. I'm going to go to the next cinema. Walk into the next cinema. Sit behind this person. Look, and I'm like, oh, look, there I am. I'm in this one too. Cool. But I'm not the main character this time. Brooke is. But I'm playing all of these different parts, right? Because Brooke is writing all the parts. He's writing all the scripts. He's the one watching it that I'm sitting behind. He also writes every single part of every single person in that. But I show up differently, right? That's not how I show up in life, is it? Well, it is based on how he sees it. And that's not wrong or right either. That's just his perspective. Eventually we can get to the point where we transcend perspective. The whole point is it's just different. So naturally, I moved to the next one. Next cinema. Who was it this time? Oh, it's my dad. Oh, well, this time it's completely different again. He sees himself completely differently to how I see him, right? My part's completely different as well. You notice how I've gone into 3 different cinemas and seen 3 completely different movies about me. Now, the whole point is when I know what that script that they've written for me is, by getting the feedback, by going through the interview questions, I can start to allow them to see me differently because I start to show up based on my commitments. Rather than based on their memory of me, because they delete, they generalize, they distort everything that we go through, everything that they go through based on their perspective. We do that as well. We're learning how to bypass that mechanism. They do that as well. If we know that, well, then we can understand that that's part of their human experience, and we can allow the capacity for us to show up differently for them as well. Laura says, I don't think the movies are all about you. Not all of them. You're just in the movie. Yeah, 100%. My movie's about me, and I'm not the lead or the main character in all of them. I become one of the other characters.
Just in your world.
Yep. And I'm the one who creates that projection of the world. Now, here's the question. Whose is right?
There's everyone's.
Which one's true?
Everyone's.
Are they though?
In their world it is, yeah.
Mm. This is what we call perspective.
Mm.
That's not it's not real truth. That's perspective.
But it's your choice what lands or not, or what you choose to take on.
Mm-hmm. The whole point is every single person creates a virtual reality of their world. That doesn't mean it's real. That also means you get to write those scripts. That also means that you get to play that game, right? Because virtual reality can just be a game, right? You can actually have fun with it. You can enjoy it. You can actually write the script differently, right? You can write how other people show up because you're already doing that. The whole point is you're doing that unknowingly. You have zero power with it. You become at the effect of it.
Right. Boys, from now on, nothing is to be different from this.
Gonna mute you for a second, Brooke, so you missed the background sound.
Boys getting told off about the printing or something.
So that person's just creating a story, right? They're projecting the world based on their perspective in that instance.
Yeah, it's funny, yeah.
And then we instantly then write a story about that person, right? You see how quick that comes up? That actually creates our world.
So Julie, with the Beatles, like, it's this one here.
And we instantly all go into writing a story about that experience. We instantly go into this entire thing of like, oh, this. We go to all of these memories. Now, what happens in a traumatic experience is as soon as something happens, you can start to trigger all of these memories, which creates a world of limitation for you. Have you ever had like an ex or something and they used to have this specific cologne or perfume or something, and then you smell it and it just triggers all of these memories?
Not really.
Yeah, cars or
Yeah.
When I see a car or or like a personality trait.
Mm.
Really
Yeah.
pisses me off. I'm like, oh yeah.
That is what we call a trigger.
When I see skanky girls out on a Friday night, I'm like, oh, it's like that ex I had.
That's an interesting story that you're
It's
writing,
a story
mate.
that I wrote,
Alternate reality.
bro.
So the whole point is we have this instant trigger of all these memories, right? That creates our entire world. We do that all day, every day. We filter every single thing through memories, which creates a world of limitation all the time, which means that we only ever show up based on that for other people and for ourselves. So in terms of that, we can go through our cleaning process to start to show up in different ways for other people and for ourselves. And because they don't have the distinctions that we do, we actually communicate with them of how we are going to show up based on our commitments rather than based on their memories of us. When we do that, they actually start to see us
Differently.
because before they weren't seeing us, they were filtering everything through every memory of us.
Yeah, that's massive for me. Like I'm a show by my actions. That's like just something that I've always done, and what I've learned on this process, or what I've learned a lot about the last few months, especially with Sarah. Sometimes with her resistance to obviously what I do, and it's like for me, I just go, I'll let my actions do the talking.
Yep.
So for me, I've actually made a conscious effort for the last month or so to be, when she says, oh, we've got to be out the door at this time to go somewhere, I'm always making a conscious effort to do that.
Yep, you ready?
But then today, she's like, it's still time, because I haven't communicated that with her. So it's memory for her. Yeah.
That's the thing. Who's responsible for that?
Me.
Yeah. The whole point is if you don't communicate that you're committed to something going forward, people don't even see it. It's like, well, she's only going to pull you up on the 2 times that you're late. Every other time she doesn't see it.
Bang on.
So that means you're responsible for how that person begins to actually see you from your commitments.
Fuck, yes.
Do you want to reframe that tone to fuck yes to fuck yes?
Fuck yes.
Yeah, love it.
Yes.
Because then this is happening for us or against us, whether we realize it or not. Because if most people live their entire life in the triangle, then this is what's happening. They see us as the problem because they are the victim, whether they realize it or not. So when we start to enroll them in our transformation, then we show up in possibility for them. That means that they can actually show up in possibility for themselves as well. Then you actually begin to see them rather than filter everything through every single memory of them. And this happens with a partner more than anyone. They show up based on every memory that you have of them. And because you're generally most vulnerable with that person, you get triggered the most by that person. So when you show up in your possibility, then you start to actually bypass that mechanism of that memory. Make sense?
Yep.
Yep.
What do you guys take out of that?
Communication is powerful.
Mm-hmm. What is communication? What is the design of communication?
It's complete. It's open loops and complete, or complete what you've opened. I don't know.
Just completion.
Yeah.
You see, when there's an open loop, then there's incompletion, there's out of integrity. And a lot of these out of integrities aren't even things that we've actually said to people. They're just things that we haven't even said, or agreements that we haven't said to them, or new ways of being that we haven't communicated to them, so they filter it through our memory. So we're out of integrity without creating an agreement.
Yep.
Because we didn't make the agreement in the first place. When we communicate that to other people, this is what I'm committed to, well, then we start to create the capacity for us to actually show up, like literally show up. Because before, we don't really show up based on their perspective. They don't show up for us because it's just memories. Even right now, you're not showing up. You turn up based on memory. So when we go into a paradox, what that does is it means you actually get pulled into the moment. You get pulled into the present. So you become present. That's the gift of it, right, Stacey? So now Stacey's responsible for me to say way more puns, right? Because I'm committed to providing that for her.
I'm not even apologizing to all of you for that.
That avocado one the other night was a fuck.
So good.
Yeah, it's so good. I was lying in bed just fucking pissing myself.
So when we think about that, this is how we start to then impact our environment. When we think about an environment, most people think about our environment impacts us. When we become a source in our environment, we become a source in another area of our life. Means we begin to show up, other people begin to show up, and then we've just added an extra element to the things that we're actually working on, because then we become a source of our environment. When we become a source of all of these different areas, well, that's when we really start to take it to the next level. Because most of the time, we're the victim of not having the capabilities. We're the victim of our environment. We're the victim of not knowing who we are. We're the victim of not knowing our purpose. We're the victim of our beliefs. We're the victim of not actually following through with our behaviors. When we become a source of this, we begin to actually take responsibility for our behaviors. The capabilities that we do and don't have, the environments and the impact that we have on the environment has on us. Of knowing who we are, who we can be, who we can become, who we are becoming, our purpose, why we're here, and our beliefs. Then we really start to get into the depth of this, because we become a source of source in our life in every area. Then we become a source of being at source of being at source, right? then we'd be responsible for being responsible about being responsible. And that becomes the paradox of the paradox, one of them. So then we start to create how others show up for us. Because we're the creator of that. Because we're the one who writes that story, right? We're the one who writes the script for how they show up. So then as soon as we've got the feedback from these questions, we can begin to actually create new commitments and agreements based on those things. Because here's the thing. We create commitments or expectations of how other people should show up without even telling them. So Sarah has an expectation of Brooke turning up on time. She didn't communicate that to him until now. Well, she might have, but he wasn't open to hearing it anyway. Stacey had a expectation of talking about her business more. Now that that becomes communicated, now we can actually have that conversation. Before it was just running through her head. It was a loop in her head. It's impacting her. There's no way it impacts me because I have no idea about it, right? She communicates that, we get completion of that, then we actually go, right, well, I'm committed to this going forward. We create a new agreement, she holds me to that, and then we've created this entirely new standard. Because you're creating expectations of every single person in your life, all day, every day, that you're not telling them about, that they don't measure up to because they have no idea that that's the yardstick that you're using. Your parents do that to you. You do that to your parents. You do that to your partner does that to you. You're not measuring up to the standards because you don't know what the standards are. So if you can find out what that is, you can start to create the enrollment of committing to doing that. And then over time, that means that you just get deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper relationships with people because you actually start communicating. Not just surface level shit. Then that becomes the relationships in your life. So how many people turn up on this call expecting me to be nice? You know up front that I'm going to call you on your bullshit if I see it. And if it's appropriate at that time to go to work on that. I take a stand for you. I go here. I instantly see where you're at. And I instantly go, all right, well, let's have a look at this. And the question is, do I actually tell you anything? Are you ready for the seat? Oh, I won't fucking work on this. This is so good when I do it in person, but it's not going to work here, actually. Do you know what I do? Everyone get their phone out and put the camera on. Like this. And then just have the camera facing you for a second. So you can see it. You're looking at the camera. What do you see? We only ever see one thing, and that's a reflection.
Beautiful human.
All that I do is feedback exactly what's going on for you. It is a different perspective so that you actually see what you're doing. That's why I don't have answers for you. All I do is mirror you. And I mirror what the impact of that is. The whole point is every single person in your life is actually mirroring you already, whether you realize it or not. That's why the world is a representation of what goes on internally for you, because you only see in the other person what you see in yourself. You make them wrong, that's because you're making yourself wrong on some level. Make sense? So when we have this feedback, we can instantly have this conversation. All right, we've got the feedback. This is what I was doing and I'm no longer committed to. The impact was this. I'm now committed to this in the future, and the impact of that is.
This is good for clients too.
Mm-hmm. This is actually just creating the depth of actual responsibility with people so that you can actually start to show up. This is creating the depth of integrity that we start to really create, because we've only talked about level 1 and level 2 of integrity previously. And when we think about creating alignment in all of these areas, well, integrity becomes the foundation of all of those things. There's a breakdown of integrity, then everything else breaks down. And ultimately, the way that you do one thing is the way that you do everything. That's why when we do this kind of work, it's not just something that improves one area of your life. You see, this is all the foundational work that then creates the expression of everything that happens externally. Because the reality of this is what we're doing is, as we're going through these steps, what we're doing is we're actually just creating an expanded internal state. Because the more you go deeper down, the more of an expression and the beauty that you start to actually see in the world. Because down here, it's contracted, it's tiny. Most people live their entire life down here. They live their entire life being upset, making things wrong.
Cheers, mate.
As we start to go through the process of expanding the internal state, then automatically the representation of the external state means that we actually start to see the beauty, the bliss, the joy in every aspect of every part of our lives. Make sense?
Yep.
What do you guys take out of that?
Powerful.
Is that it? Brooke's trying to look good here.
I feel like it's something, it's one of those ones, like a number of the concepts where you kind of know it, but you don't have a process to follow to get that power.
Mm.
So you do that in some situations, but in other situations you don't, because it gets uncomfortable and you're just like, But when there's a process to follow, if you can create that habit, then I can really see the power, as I said, even for clients or for anything, like when you open to that feedback, like Roger's screaming out to me now, going out to him, boom, straight away. Look, like I'm committed to being there for you, therefore, bang. What do you think?
Yep. So we bring it back to this. What is this a representation of?
You, your family, the world, the universe.
What is it?
The ripple.
Yep.
The ripple. Hey.
Just the ripple effect. The whole point is you can drop just the red circle in and that has a good ripple, right? But then if you enter the next level, well, then it's something, you're dropping something bigger and it's a bigger ripple effect, right? You take on to the yellow level, well, then that's a bigger ripple effect, right? You go to green, even bigger. We create the foundation of each of these concepts and then it creates a bigger and bigger and bigger impact. And as we then map that back to this, all that does is it creates a more expanded internal state, which means that you then start to tap into these higher levels as well, because if you notice, those colors map out, right? Same thing. So the bigger the thing that you drop in that water, the bigger the impact that it's going to be. Then that maps out back to this, right? Because if you've got 5 different things that you're dropping at all points in time, well, then that just becomes an entire thing that you're dropping as it is. When they're all lined up, then it becomes so much more powerful, right? How big does the ripple become then? How powerful does it become then? How powerful do you become then?
Monsoonal.
Monsoonal.
And this is the thing. We're already doing all of these things already. The whole point is all of these things are working against us until we learn the concepts of them and then have them work for us. We're at the effect of them rather than being at the source of them. Because previously the network of conversations were working against us. Previously getting feedback was working against us. Previously other people were showing up and that was working against us. As we become at source and how that happens, then we start to go through the different levels. Then we start to then imprint other people. So other people start to show up. We've started to lay the foundations for that. Then we eventually get to the point where we actually start to create our reality and how that shows up. Make sense?
Mm.
And it comes back to this. Because there are certain points in this process where you go from being imprinted to imprinting other people. And there are certain points as well where you pass them and then you no longer begin to live down here as much, even at all. Do you want to know what those points are? Let's map it out. Fuck it. Oh, that's not what I wanted. So when we think about that boy goes in there. Just get it like that. So here we become impacted by other people. If you're below 200, you're at the effect of other people. You become the victim. You're in the triangle. It's gonna annoy me. So when we start to become at source in life, we go from here. Now when we get to 540, we no longer be imprinted by other people. Then people come in contact with us and they become imprinted by us, by our presence, by the intention that we just put out to the world before we even say anything. When we're down here, we're at the effect of everyone else. As we start to move up here, everyone becomes imprinted by us. That is how we transition from here to here. As we start to go through this process, that's what we work towards. It starts with the foundation of being at source, and then being at source of being at source, and then being at source of being at source of being at source, which allows us to be then able to step into the capacity of that. Does that sound exciting?
Yep. Yes.
Love it, Brooke. Love the enthusiasm. Singing's always fun. Questions with that? No questions?
If you are, does it work in the same capacity as like integrity, in the same sort of way of like if you're feeling a bit lousy or you're feeling a bit like something's off, can you use something like this to make it happen? Do you have to interview 5 people around you, or can you be like how do you identify?
So when we think about integrity, all that we've started to highlight is all of these integrities that are unseen to us.
Yep.
See, we've been making agreements where we're out of integrity as well. That creates an extra layer of out of integrity, because we've had all of these integrities which are unseen to us based on commitments or agreements that we didn't even know that are made about us. We didn't even necessarily make them. The whole point is if we're making all these agreements and breaking these agreements to ourselves, that creates an extra layer of limitation, right? Then you've got limitation on limitation. So if you're not feeling it, it's like, well, cool, where are you out of integrity? Because you can consciously start to look for that. You can consciously go, all right, well, let's have a look. Where am I out of integrity? Where am I not taking responsibility? And any single time that you've been late, or have you created completion of all of those times? Have you created a new commitment in the future for that? Have you cleaned up old relationships? Because that could be an out of integrity. It could be an incompletion. That could be business. That could be personal. That could be whatever. Where have you been inauthentic? And inauthenticity can show up as, oh yeah, I don't want to tell you what you're, I can never count on you for. That's being inauthentic. Not answering that to look good, to not upset the other person is out of integrity, which is why I push. The whole point is that feedback doesn't impact me as much as it impacts the other person that's actually giving it. Because if I then sell out on them not giving me an answer at all, well, that impacts them because then they're being inauthentic. So then it becomes my responsibility to be able to create the space for them to be able to do that. Because then you're taking a stand for them to actually be authentic. Which is why some of these conversations can be like, oh, well, 1, 2, 3, those questions are easy. 4, 20 minutes. And now that you do this, it's like, well, I want to live my life authentically because that's going to give me speed and power. I'm going to be in another level of alignment. Then we can start to really get the results that we want. What's the whistle for, Brooke? I know I'm good looking and all, but...
Good looking rooster.
Because I'm a cock, or?
Oh, just...
No?
No. Oh, I see.
Oh, wow, that was slow.
This is why we need more puns.
Sorry, man.
Yes.
Might be a cock, but yeah, avocado.
Oh, dear.
Mate,
it's not 2:30 yet.
Oh, you didn't remember that one, don't you? 2:30.
Yeah.
No, I was just thinking like the power in this is huge.
Yeah.
Like if you had staff, or when we have staff, it'd be fucking huge.
Yep. And you notice how people instantly go to, all right, well, this, then, there, rather than going, all right, well, where the fuck am I being inauthentic myself? Where am I out of integrity myself? Because that's where it starts. Because ultimately, we remain inauthentic because we don't communicate things. Because then we'll look bad. So how many people put their hand up before the call to say they didn't watch The Matrix, knowing that we said that we're going to do that? Well, very few. Because we don't want to look bad. And when we actually shorten that time frame, which becomes the mechanism of actually starting to get much more speed and power with our integrity, we actually look at it based on the foundational 3 start levels of that. So it's like we're talking about integrity in terms of enrolling other people to help maintain our integrity. But we're also looking at, well, if I have no intention of watching it, well, you can communicate that straight away and say, hey, no, I'm not going to do it. Then you just don't even make that agreement. Then it can't be out of integrity, right? And the sooner that you make it, the less time that you have. Because if you can get to the point where you're on this call and you haven't watched it, and there's no, you know that this morning there's no way that you could have watched it before this call because of your appointments, well, then you can communicate that then, because then that creates completion of it sooner. Because there's all of these little agreements which we've made with people and with ourselves, which we break all day, every day.
I already thought about it this morning, and then I was like, oh, it's all right, Kirsten wouldn't have watched it anyway, so it's all good. I want to look back.
I didn't either. Well, no, I didn't. I didn't.
Yep, the whole point is not about doing it or not doing it. The whole point about it is the completion of it.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. I did not watch The Matrix.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing. The whole point is we can complete all of these things which are incomplete for us, regardless of how big or small they are. Because the more that we complete, the more power that we get. The more that we leave open, the less power that we have. Make sense?
Mhm.
Yeah.
So how many agreements have you made to other people today that you've already broken? How many have you made to yourself that you've already broken?
Yeah, that's what I was about to say. That
This is the thing though. We're like, all right, well, I won't, no, I want to look good to that other person, so I won't create that commitment. So if I don't follow through, then I won't look bad, right? But then it's like, oh, you know what? I'm going to go and do that tonight at 7 o'clock. 7:30 comes around, you're like, oh, no, I'll just do it tomorrow.
have you been inside my head lately?
Mate, always. I've always been there. So what we think about is we break agreements to ourselves all day, every day. And we just push it out of sight, out of mind. Which creates a lack of trust in ourselves. Which then creates an expression of the world showing up like that. So then we start to really bring consciousness to every single thought that we have. Because if we're going to create an agreement with ourselves, then we're going to follow through with it, right? So we can bring an element of consciousness to our thought process because we're the one who create them now, right? Before, that was showing up based on memory, based on comparison, based on recall, and they still do at certain points. And we can bring consciousness to that process as well. And when we bring an agreement where we don't complete it, or we know that we're not going to complete it, we can complete it by saying, I'm not doing that. My commitment going forward is to do this. Completion in the past. We bring consciousness to everything that we do, right? So what are we actually doing on these calls?
Bring higher level of consciousness. Oh.
That's the thing, right? Consciousness, awareness, we're bringing awareness or consciousness to actually everything that we're really doing unknowingly. Because you're doing all these things already. You just don't notice that you're doing it. The whole point is you get to create every aspect of your life when you're aware that you're creating every aspect of your life already. You're just not consciously doing it. You're unconsciously doing it. How's that going for you? Oh, well, it's perfect, whole, and complete. It's all part of the human experience, right? And that can evolve over time.
Caught in a trap. I can't walk out.
Karaoke Thursday.
When you bring that consciousness to the creation of your human experience, well, then that adds to the perfectness, the wholeness, and the completeness of the experience, right? and you get to create your human experience. Then you become at source of being at source of being at source of creating your own human experience, which is the experience of experiencing the human experience, which is what you get to experience. Based on you choosing to choose what you choose because you choose it because it is what it is. And it just is. So, are you ready for the kicker?
There's more?
There's always more, mate. What happened when I created those paradoxes for you? Yeah, you created space. So how many times are you using those paradoxes throughout the day to be able to create space, to be able to bypass your conscious brain, all the bullshit beliefs that you've created that are holding you back? That was a mechanism where you could instantly go into a paradox to bypass that bullshit belief system that you have. How often are you doing that? And now that it's brought into your consciousness, into your awareness, how often can you do that going forward? Because if you notice something where, oh, I'm a bad boy or bad girl for Laura, or I'm not good enough, or whatever it is, well, then that's just going back to a belief, a memory that you've created in terms of creating this anchor to a certain experience or a certain memory that creates a cascade of events. We can bypass that straight through paradox. Because if that's just all part of the human experience, and it's all part of the human experience, and it's the human experience, and you get to experience it, and it just is what it is because it just is, and you choose it because you choose it because you can choose it, and you choose to choose it, what just happened to all your beliefs? What just happened to all your limitations? Bypass. You ready for it? What's a belief? That's just a bullshit agreement that you've created with yourself. That's your truth, which is not actually true. You make it true.
At least it's one you've chosen, yeah?
Nope. You choose some of them. You don't choose that as a man you need to be strong. You don't choose that.
No.
You don't choose to look good and avoid looking bad. You don't choose that.
But if you choose to be vegetarian in an adult life, then you choose that, yeah? That's your belief that you choose.
Mm-hmm. So there's chosen ones and there's unchosen ones. There's societal ones.
Yep.
The whole point is if you notice that a belief comes up, it's like, why don't we just go into paradox and remove that belief? And when you begin to live in paradox, what happens?
Everything opens up.
Mm-hmm. Infinite possibility. Then it's just like, how deep do you want to go into paradoxes? Well, how deep did we go to before? Well, we did choosing, we did human experience, we did isness. We can go into more paradoxes. We can go into the cosmic humor, the puns. We can talk about the paradox of love. We can talk about the paradox of anything.
It's the paradox of love.
Well, it depends who you talk to, right? There's different ones. What's the paradox of love, Brooke?
I don't know, lust.
Oh, lust. Lust is completely different to love. Lust is an emotion of pursuit of something that we think we're going to get that's going to make us happy, which ultimately just leaves us unfulfilled, which is what most people categorize as love.
So apathy, in a way. No? Or hate would be the opposite of love, maybe.
We're not talking about opposites here. Remember, we're talking about paradoxes. So what's the design of love then? Let's go a different path. Because the design and the paradox are two different things as well.
The design of love. Oh.
Laura's just lucky that she didn't have a microphone today, right? She talked about this at a wedding.
Mm.
The design of love.
I don't know, what's the design of love?
You tell me.
To love yourself.
Is that the design of it though? Or is that a result? I think that would be a consequence. Because if you loved yourself, that's not the design of it, like, right?
The design of love is like to like make a stand for yourself. Yeah.
What else you got?
To it's like an abundance of like I don't know, like loyalty, and they're just another one. They're just other ones, though, aren't they?
Mm-hmm.
I like having the back without any.
These are all results, consequences.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, it's what I'm fucked if I know what the design is in.
Mm. So it's the design of communication. Well, that was completion, right? Let's pull up a slide on it. I don't know what deck this is in.
The design of love. So the design of communication is to create completion. And the design of love would be to
So when we think about the design of something, it allows us to be able to step into the paradox of it. What we instantly go to is consequences. When we think about the paradox of choosing, we instantly go, oh, I just need to accept it, which is a consequence. We have to go back through the pathway to be able to go, all right, what's the construct of it? What's the design of it? Because then we can actually go through the process. So when we think about the design of love, what is it? Well, the natural tendency is like, right, well, what happens when I'm in love? Well, I receive shit, right? I receive love. Well, is that still a consequence? Well, then how do we take it one step back? Any ideas? Do that.
Oh, here we go.
So if we're going to receive something, right, where does it start? It starts here, right? So the design of love is giving love, because then that creates the capacity for you to be open to receiving, which creates an increased capacity of it. Then it starts to create this compounding cycle. And it consistently grows and grows and grows. It starts with you actually giving love, one, to yourself, but then also to other people as well. So the design of love is actually giving love. That starts with yourself. That becomes a representation of how it shows up in the world in terms of how you see everything, which creates the capacity for you to actually be open to it. Because if you give it to yourself, then you're actually open to receiving it as well, which creates an increased capacity. And then it grows and grows and grows and grows. And then what happens?
And then it just flows.
Doesn't it?
Mm. Unconditional love.
Mm-hmm. And when we think about unconditional love, where does that sit here?
Maybe apathy, because it's like, I love you, but I wish you weren't a cock, but I love you.
Unconditional love is 540.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. That, my friends, is the transition point where people begin to be imprinted by you and you don't become imprinted by them. Then when you clean, then just by being in your presence, they actually start to feel that, which is what the guy did in terms of the Ho'oponopono Ono guy. And that's what happens when you catch up with someone and it's just like, oh my God, how amazing was that? You actually experience love from that person unconditionally. And some people attach that as, well, that person's where I get that. So that's how I get it. That's how I experience it. When the reality is all that person did was allow that person to actually experience that state for themselves, for that to become an internal representation of how they feel so they can actually start to express that out into the world and step to that point too. Make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Now that's not that person. That's just them allowing you to experience that as a capacity. Which is the limitation, because then people connect it with the person down here. If someone's down in these areas, and they connect that with the person. And the limitation with some relationships is when they get into something like this, where they're not complete, it's two different people. When they get into a loop where it creates it, they get to experience this, but they connect it with only the other person gets them to experience that. This is first created in you. It's creating that complete circle here before anything else. Because then when you come in contact with someone else who's another complete circle, well, then that creates that. Then that creates that capacity. If you're looking at someone else to be able to create a loop here, this in relationships is where people argue all the time, because you've got a half complete person, a half complete person. And oh, you complete me. Now we're one whole complete person with 2 bodies, 2 egos. How's that going to go? Goes like this, doesn't it?
Boom.
Either you separate or you just don't talk. That's because it's 2 incomplete people. The whole point is when you create that capacity to experience that love of yourself, then other people can actually start to show up based on them loving themselves. Then you start to experience this unconditional love, because that unconditional love starts with you and yourself first. That doesn't come from someone else. That comes from this first. Make sense?
Yep.
And I have no idea how we went down that path. And obviously it was important for you guys, so we went there. Questions. That's the design of love. That's not the paradox of love. We'll leave that one for another time. And if you understand the design of it, well, then you actually start to get actual power with it, right? You can become a source of actually creating it in your life. Because what happens here is you compete for energy. When this is here, you just create your own energy. You've got this love of yourself where you've got all energy that you've tapped into in terms of your infinite potential. That comes from the love of yourself. When you're here, you're competing for energy. You only think there's a certain amount. It's a loop. And it's like, all right, well, I'm going to take that away from you because you're not giving me what I want.
I'm going to stop cooking dinner because, okay.
Mm-hmm. And that person's just a mirror for what's going on for you internally, right?
I know. That's what I'm laughing about.
Good fun, isn't it? Questions?
Could we do a really quick 1 second recap of the day of today? Because we've gone through a shitload.
Mm-hmm. A 1 second recap, okay? Paradox.
Okay. Can we do a 30 second recap of
30-second recap. Easy. Paradox.
Come on, mate.
All right. Here's your 30-second recap. You are at source of how every single person shows up in your life and how you show up to them. When you see that, you begin to actually create that. You can then use that as a mechanism for actually creating the life that you want. Then you can actually use any tool at any point in your life called paradox to be able to bypass any bullshit belief that you have to be able to create ultimately what you want. About 20 seconds.
It's good.
Do you want another time frame where you give me a little bit more time, a little bit less time? 17 seconds? What do you want?
I think that was good.
It's not bad for a cock, eh?
Not bad, 4 o'clock.
It's only 2:40. It's not 4 o'clock. No? No? No one? 4 o'clock? 4 o'clock?
Yeah, I got it.
Someone got it. Come on, guys.
I didn't get it. 4 o'clock.
4 o'clock? 4 o'clock? Not bad for a cock?
4 o'clock, 4 o'clock. Yes.
Yeah. Cool. Got it. It's not as funny if you have to explain it 3 times, though.
I was too focused on the 2.
Loses the impact.
I was too focused on the 2:40.
Yeah. Questions.
These paradoxes are going to fucking be good for the stand-up comedy at the end of the year, aren't they? Going to get paradox game on.
Okay. Homework. Go back to your interview people and tell them what you're committed to going forward. Enroll them in what you're creating in your future. Enroll them in what you're manifesting in your life. Make sense?
Yep.
Awesome. Job done.
Go. Thanks, Cock.
Thanks. Well, I used to be an asshole, remember? That was the old joke that we had. Now I'm not.
You still do a pretty good job as an asshole, mate.
Yeah. I'm a cock and an asshole now. That's an interesting combination.
Yeah.
What's the paradox of that one? Some will like it, some won't so much. It's alright.
It's an acquired taste.
Oh yeah. Oh yes.
Yeah, he gets it now.
Yeah. Yeah. Beautiful.
All right. Enough sex jokes.
Yes. Adios.
All right. Enjoy the rest of your afternoon, team.
Bye.
Keep me in the loop how your homework goes and keep the integrity there.
Yep. Beautiful.
All right.
All right. Toodaloo, boy.
Bye.